Batman is undoubtedly one of the most popular comic heroes, catching the attention of millions of viewers and readers continuously for decades. However, if we looked at this character, we notice an inseparable element, the self-proclaimed right to use violence against people who, according to him, deserve it, which in itself is widely regarded as improper. That is why today we will consider what the morality of a character like Batman looks like and why we as viewers judge it clearly as positive. Let's start with the fact that the social environment in which Batman operates is a classic image of a system that does not cope with problems. The city of Gotham is possessed by corruption and crime. Decent citizens are afraid to go out into the streets after dark, and the existing power structures cannot and sometimes do not even want to restore order. Such realities naturally give rise to deeper and deeper chaos, also manifesting in the criminals operating in them. The most striking example of this is, of course, the Joker, which in many images is presented almost as the epitome of anarchy. He just wants to accelerate the collapse of a falling society and show people how crazy they are. This is not at all surprising because on such conditions, often the first answer is the desire to demolish the inoperative system, that is, the revolution. Meanwhile, Batman presents a completely different approach to the problem. He recognizes that the existing system simply cannot solve those problems. However, he is not going to destroy it. Instead, he puts himself outside the system, outside the set norms and laws, and recognizes that he will judge what is right and wrong, will bring justice and restore order where it is needed, and assumes that serious threats can be combated by violence which does not need anyone's consent. At first glance, this may look like a dictatorial or authoritarian attitude in which the individual recognizes that he is not responsible to anyone, which incidentally he is accused of by figures assessing his media actions. However, this association is not entirely accurate. Authoritarianism is based on attempts to fix problems by taking the highest place in the hierarchy in the system and subordinating and shaping it from above. Meanwhile, Batman does not occupy a place in the hierarchy at all, but remains outside the system. He does not accept any formal authority or intend to subordinate anyone. He simply recognizes that the system needs temporary outside help. He puts himself above the rules, but not because he rejects them, but because they are insufficient in a given situation. He bends and breaks norms and rules because he thinks that in some situations it is a better way to achieve the goal for which these principles exist. That is to ensure social security. At the same time, he knows that this is an emergency that cannot be the norm. When promising prosecutor Harvey Dent arrives in Gotham, hoping to resolve problems legally, Batman is relieved, and hoping that the system will return to normal and he will no longer be needed. This unfortunately does not happen after the Joker decides to prove to him that everyone has their dark side. In many stories, it is shown that the fight against evil can dangerously bring you closer to it. And by reaching for radical measures, even for good reasons, it is easy to cross the line between good and evil. It is worth noting, however, that Batman is not an anti-hero like Punisher or Wolverine, who likewise do not shun unlawful violence against people for the purposes of narratives considered to be bad. And while they have their justification for what they do, we could not call their actions good. Meanwhile, what Batman does, the viewers usually clearly assess as positive. This is because, as we said, he does not reject the rules in themselves, and what is more, he does not do it for himself. He does not act in emotions or revenge. He does this because he believes it's the best way to save other people from experiencing what he did. What's more, he could lead a comfortable, rich life, but he gives it up for his mission. And when asked why, he answers that he must do it because no one else will. His calling is his whole life. Unlike other heroes who hide their true self under the image of a superhero, in the case of the Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne is an artificial person shown to the world under whom his true self, that is Batman, hides. This is well illustrated by the scene at the costume party where everyone except for Bruce Wayne wears a mask, because his everyday face is a mask for the real person who is Batman. Authority is key to understanding Batman's social perception. The fact that he is received by many characters positively and social justification for his action does not result from his position in the hierarchy, but rather from his authority. And these are two different things. While you can impose a hierarchy on someone, you can't force them to recognize authority. Authorities are shaped from below. And of course, it's good when people in the hierarchy have some authority, but we know that this is not always the case. And Batman's example just shows the power of authority that is not part of any hierarchy. People, including fans who support Batman, do not actually approve of extrajudicial actions or that they would like anybody to perform them. They recognize that only he can do such things. Thanks to his extraordinary authority, people see him as an exception. This is perfectly illustrated by the scene when the retiring Commissioner Gordon is asked by his successor how he could tolerate someone in the city who breaks the law so clearly. He replies that important and big matters can be ambiguous, and that sometimes we just can't judge if something brings more good or bad. And then we have to rely on someone bigger than ourselves. And it's not like Batman couldn't abuse his power or do something wrong. However, because of who he is and what he has achieved so far, we trust that he will not. In this sense, Batman is a symbolic representation of how he, or even perhaps how authority, should work in crisis situations. Of course, it can be said that this type of attitude of trust towards authority can also raise a number of problems, at least in the form of people who think they are special enough to do the same. With the fact that many of them either don't know what they've gotten themselves into or do not have inhibitions and become exactly what they wanted to fight. And in the political sphere, misplaced trust can lead to catastrophic consequences, which will be discussed in the episode on tyranny, with Star Wars as an example. And unless you can of course say that it is better to approach the issue yourself if you have the competence, however, this does not change the fact that in many issues the world is overwhelming us and reliance on authorities cannot be avoided, even in cases where we simply lack knowledge. Also regarding the exception to the rules. Even if, for example, we recognize that violence is in principle a bad way of resolving conflicts, there is no doubt that there are cases when it needs to be used because it simply is the least wrong way out. It's quite likely possible that Commissioner Gordon was right, and also in terms of good and evil, sometimes we cannot assess the situation clearly. And if we have no choice and the situation requires that we take a position, maybe we can do nothing but rely on the assessment of someone bigger than us. Because, as we said, reliance on someone else's judgment cannot be completely avoided. And if we do not do it consciously or deliberately, we will do it automatically in the first threat situation. We appreciate you guys spending time with us here, so please go ahead and watch our other videos. Oh, and ring that notification bell so you're the first one to get the new ones.